I was listening to a conversation this morning among some very intelligent and highly educated people. And one of the questions that was asked from someone that honestly I would have thought they already knew the answer to that question, but their response to the answer they got seemed a little shocked. And I thought, well, I would have thought, given what they do, they're way ahead of this curve. But apparently there's still a little bit of blind spot in that question. Here was the question. At what age do people create their worldview? At what age do people create their worldview? Welcome to Leading Leaders Podcast. 5-minute videos, 5 days a week. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. Now here's the reality. Many people believe, especially in developing what I would consider to be complex curriculums, that reaching people between high school and college is the ideal time to really shape the way they see the world. While there's a lot of curriculum developed in that time frame, for those who can understand more complex ideas, things such as economic policies and the political impact around the world of wars or of commerce or capitalism versus socialism versus Marxism versus communism. And there's a lot of conversation that's had in colleges, at whether you're talking about the junior college level or you're talking about the PhD level, there's a lot of conversation that's had about the merits or the demerits of any kind of social construct. And so there's a lot of conversation that can be had in that arena, because at that point you can logically and intellectually debate, discuss, and articulate your ideas. But that's not generally where worldviews are formed. That's where worldviews are challenged. Let that settle in for a minute. See, George Barna agrees with me. The way I've said it since I was 18 or 19 years old, I believe it's in my journals from all the way back to my first year out of basic training when I was still in the military. It was kind of an epiphany as I watched people around me and studied just human nature. What dawned on me was that character is generally created in someone between about the ages of 2 or 3 and 5 or 6. And character is much more like a marble statue. Once it's solidified, the who that person is going to be, without the influence of a major cataclysmic event, such as a death of a significant person in the family, a molestation, a major traumatic event that changes everything about their world. Unless one of those things happens, that marble statue carved between 2 and 3 and 6 and 7 years old is pretty much the who that they're going to be all of their life. But personality is much more like a fire. And by that I mean a fire has 3 basic principles: heat, fuel, and oxygen. And heat, fuel, and oxygen are the same components in every fire. What changes is the environment. A fire in a waste paper basket has different fuel than a fire in a dumpster, or the fire on an aircraft, or the fire in an aircraft carrier where you've got jet fuel and explosives and ammunitions and food and people and clothing. There's a whole lot more there to burn, and it's going to burn hotter and in a different way than a waste paper basket that has nothing in it but recyclable paper. The fire components didn't change. It's still heat and fuel and oxygen, but the difference of the fuel and the difference of the environment changes everything. So it is with personality. Your character is one thing. That's what you'll create between 2 and 3 and 6 and 7. And for the rest of your life, pretty much that character, sort of lopping off an arm, that marble statue will be the same. But the personality will be different based on the environment that you're in. So when do we create worldview? Well, worldview comes from character. They are almost one and the same. In fact, if you listen to some of the geniuses in the field, Daniel Amen, John Maxwell, Dr. Caroline Leaf, even people like Tony Robbins or Dr. Mark Sharona, they will all, even Bruce Lipton, they will all come to a very narrow perspective on ideas of worldview, but they say it a little differently. Rather than saying that worldview is character, they will say that worldview is belief system. So I want you to let that settle in for a minute, because I have to take you somewhere with this. This is an extremely important part of our elections coming up. See, we tend to think that elections are about politics, that elections are about the people who are running for office, that elections are really only about what are the top 5 issues. Maybe it's abortion. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's about world peace. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's about whether or not I have the right to own a gun, or I have the right to wear a mask or not wear a mask. See, if those are the issues that are important to you, then you may vote specifically based on those issues. But worldview goes back to character, and character goes back to what you learned and observed about the world between 2 and 3 years old and 6 and 7 years old. So when do we influence worldview? When do we influence belief systems? When do we influence character? Well, see, some of the things that I believe are important are the presence of mom and dad in the home. I believe that, according to my worldview and my experiences in life, a home with both parents in it is a more stable home. A home with both parents in it, as long as they're healthy parents and a healthy relationship with each other, tends to be a home with less poverty in it. Tends to be a home with a better education in it. Tends to be a home that launches young people into a world where they will be successful in life. And I don't mean uber rich. I mean, they will not be a burden on society. They will be givers to society and not takers from society. And I believe that a foundation of a good, solid 2-parent home is a strong place to start with that. And I believe that the impact that 2-parent home, that solid relationship, that honest, open, loving communication starting between mom and dad around 2 and 3 year old and 6 and 7 year old children, that age gap, when they observe those things from their parents, when they see their parents working hard, when they see their parents earning their own way, when they see their parents doing the right thing, that's the kind of character they create. That's the kind of worldview they create. That's the kind of belief system they create. Now, I can also tell you, and if you don't believe me, just go back and read. Go to YouTube, type in Anthony Robbins, and listen to his own story. And he will tell you he is the multi-billionaire he is today because of an incident, I believe, when he was about 14 years old. And that was that his family lived in abject poverty. Even though his dad worked, he just didn't make enough to support the family. And someone came to his door to give them Thanksgiving dinner, and his dad rejected it and sent it away. And a broken-hearted 14-year-old, very confused young man said, "I will not be so proud that I cannot receive help." But by the time he was 18 years old, he said, "I will spend the rest of my life feeding another family, not just my own, but somebody else's." And I believe his Feed the Children program feeds millions of kids every year. Now, that was a belief system built around an event that happened a little later in life. But the core values of who Tony Robbins turned out to be have not been without significant struggle. There are a lot of young people today, middle school to college age, who are reshaping their worldview differently than what their parents had. Some for better, some for worse. That's just my opinion. But a lot of those reshaped worldviews are happening through media, through episodic television, through music. Yeah, just go back and listen to the lyrics. If you haven't read the lyrics, don't bother listening, but read the lyrics to the song WAP, W-A-P, by Cardi B. Read those lyrics and then understand that the words to that song are influencing the thoughts of your children in elementary and middle school right now. It's a top 100 song. We're getting requests for it at weddings, and I'm sure if we were doing school events, we'd be getting requests for it at school events. Read those lyrics and ask yourself, what worldview is that imposing upon or instigating in your young children in elementary and middle school? When you read the lyrics to that song, you're going to understand there's a worldview that's being inculcated into your children that you may or may not agree with. And it's a big deal. See, with the title of this message, I said Storypower is a worldview tool. A lot of people think when I talk about Storypower, I'm talking about storytelling for the purpose of a sales pitch. Well, sure, you can use it that way. You can also use Storypower as a leadership tool. You can also use Storypower as a communication tool if you want to stand on the stage and tell a story. But Storypower that I teach, the whole program starts with your worldview and how it comes out of your mouth, because a lot of times you'll expose your own character and telling a story that you thought was just an incident that maybe is amusing. But in the words that you're choosing, you're revealing who you are in an entirely different way. Yeah, this is a really long Leading Leaders podcast, but I'm not going to apologize for it, because now is the time in our history that I believe this concept absolutely must be revealed, and it's got to be brought into its powerful position. The story you tell about tomorrow, the 19th anniversary of 9/11, the story you tell will not only impact the young people around you, it will reveal about you more than you could possibly imagine. See, Storypower reveals our character. 2 to 3, 6 to 7. Storypower reveals the marble statue that is the character of who we are, the worldview that we hold, the belief system that we make all of our decisions around. Storypower exposes that. Storypower is also a way to rewrite that. So if there are young people in your life, from college age all the way down to 2 or 3 years old, understand that the words coming out of your mouth are shaping the worldview for the decisions they will make 18 years from now when they get to vote. See, understand this. We're talking about an election cycle that genuinely will. I don't care about the personalities. I don't care which one of the two candidates you like right now. If you don't learn to see beyond that, you will be voting blind. Forget about the people and ask yourself this question. Which worldview do you support for our country? Understand there's an entire wave of young people this year, 18 years old, now legally old enough to vote, who did not experience 9/11 the way anyone older than that did. If you're not 22, 24 years old, the likelihood that you even recall it as a personal experience are zero, because we don't remember things before 3 or 4 years old. If you know anything about 9/11 and you're younger than 22, it's only what you've been told. Now, were you told that it was a conspiracy created by our government for the purpose of capitalism, or were you told that terrorists knocked down those buildings in an effort to change the way of American life? And your worldview will impact the way you vote, will impact the way you educate your own children, will impact the way you spend your money, the places you go, and the things you do. Storypower is absolutely critical. The way you tell that story will reveal who you are. It will reveal your belief systems and your worldview. And if you leave out that story, that too will reveal a lot. I want to challenge you as leaders and influencers to understand there's a reason that transgendered people go into public schools, public libraries, and elementary schools when the kids are between 3 and 7 years old to do story time, storytelling, story reading, book reading to young children while in drag. They don't do that just because it's entertaining. They do it because they're exposing, revealing, and indoctrinating a different worldview than these kids may experience at home. Whether you agree with it or you don't, there's a specific strategic, tactical reason they do it that way. All I'm saying, leaders, is wake up. When do you influence? When do you tell the stories? And what stories do you tell to impact the worldview of the next generation? Middle school, high school, college? At this point, you're arguing their ability to articulate it. Changing their worldview is going to be a lot more complicated. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.